We need workplace democracy in Britain. In the UK, and in fact more broadly in the Western world, we do not have in any significant capacity democratisation of our workplaces. In fact, we have the absolute opposite of democracy. We have workplace tyranny. The modern structure of a corporation is completely and utterly undemocratic. It's incredibly hierarchical, where decisions are made at the top without any say from workers at the bottom. They're made at the top in the interests of shareholders, which means in the interests of profit. And effectively, people can rent their labour, and become wage slaves without ever owning the companies they work for and generate profit for, and without ever having any significant say over the company's policies and conditions. That is a complete and utter immorality and a complete and utter embarrassment. Everyone believes in the Western world that our political sphere, our government, our councils should be subject to electoral approval. They should be subject to regular elections where we vote for who we want to represent us. Now, of course, in reality, that doesn't actually mean that we have a democracy, because a democracy is a lot more complicated than that. And in reality, our current democracies of the West and many parts of the world are unfortunately corrupt, and corporate interests capture government and mean that essentially we have corporatism. We don't have functioning democracies that they're supposed to function on paper, such as the fact that when you look at the public opinion on matters such as nationalisation, public investment, law and order, on many ways the laws in government are not reflected, and the policies in government are not reflected in popular opinion. So the idea that just because you can elect someone to Parliament gives you democracy is not really true. But for the purposes of this argument, we are going to say that that is true. Well, in the political sphere, you can, if you want to, at the next election, vote for a different party, and you can vote for a different representative. But in our workplaces, you cannot do that. In our workplaces, there are no workplace democratic structures other than trade unions that operate within our companies. But this is wrong. We should, in a fair society, have complete democratisation of our economic sphere. What this would mean in practice would be that on the smallest level, in a single company, instead of having it with essentially shareholders being the directors and the senior management, and they have the voting rights, and they set salaries, and they set the conditions of the company, etc., with all non-shareholding workers completely excluded from this decision-making process. Instead, what you would have is, essentially, you would have direct worker self-management. And what that would mean is, inside all companies, you would have all worker owners as members of the General Assembly, which would essentially act as a kind of mini parliament or council that would act as the principal policy-making body of the company and would represent all of workers' interests, because you would vote on the policies, on the pay, on the company direction, and you would also elect all management if management was required. In very small companies, where it was deemed you could have a flat structure where there is no such thing as a manager, then that would be fine. But in larger companies, any management or coordinators could be elected. Yes, management should be elected if it's required. In a tiny company, it's debatable that you would need management, because the direction of the company, etc., would be discussed during these meetings. But in larger companies where it's deemed that there is a requirement for coordinators, then they would be elected and they could be instantly revoked should they not implement the mandate of the workers that have been set. But all management would be elected directly from workers. So at the core of workplace democracy, of course, is a democratic structure to the company, and that will depend upon how big the company is. Whether, if it's a tiny company, as I've said, it would probably have a flat management structure so that there would be no such thing as a director or manager. It would just be agreed at these meetings what the general direction is of the company and what each job role is. But in larger companies, there probably will be a need to elect further governing councils or workers' councils, which may have elected delegates who have been directly elected from the General Assembly, and they may be like delegates from each part of the business, from procurement, from manufacturing, from the warehouse, etc., and they would be delegated to carry out the interests of the General Assembly. But should they not carry out their democratic mandate, they could be immediately revoked by impeachment. So any type of hierarchical structure would be from the bottom up, not top down, because they've all been elected directly from the General Assembly, who meets regularly.